Okay, man. We're live.
We made it. We're on.
We did it. We did it after a 2-week hiatus.
Ooh, that was too long.
That was not the 2 weeks you want to miss either.
I was starting to go through withdrawal symptoms.
Oh, that's so sweet, man.
Not from you, from
never
our
mind.
fans.
from our fans, the adoring love that we get. Where are you guys? When are you coming back?
Our one fan.
No. No, we have more than one. I think we've tripled our viewership. I think we've got 3 now. So
yeah, there you go. What all has happened in the last 3 weeks?
I think we get played more in syndication. Is my impression? Yeah.
Well, and are we mostly just on Facebook?
Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn now. So.
Oh, okay. So I saw Facebook had changed their rules about how long they were going to keep live streams or archive them or whatever. So,
well, it's on YouTube, so that's where the catalog is. If you'd like to go back and review any of our predictions, well, I think we've been pretty good, except for last week. Except for
my
last
predictions
week,
have been bad.
Well, you redeemed yourself last week when you pointed out my complete bamboozlement with an AI hoax.
Oh yeah. Hey, they're just everywhere now.
That was embarrassing.
That's the world we live in.
Yeah, I was like, man, that was a deep fake that was very embarrassing.
It's like the grandmas on Facebook. They're like, look at this orangutan, sitting on the throne in, the Vatican, and you're like, yeah, that's not real. Yeah, like I saw the picture.
Yeah. The Holy Father is being judged.
Well, he is now. I mean, have you heard? Is he still with us, or has he passed away?
Let's see here. Pope.
Because I had heard that he was not doing well at all.
And he's stable. 88? Stable, but no new.
Okay.
No new. At least Pope slept well overnight after 2 respiratory insufficiencies. He's off his ventilator and stable, but his health condition is called complex. Man, he's really gained a lot of weight.
You have a picture of him? I was looking to see what was. I couldn't see him.
Yeah, let me. Let's see here. Share. Here we go. There you go.
Oh yeah.
It's rough.
Well, I think it's like the desk job, and as you get older, your activity levels go down, and not necessarily what you eat.
But man, I mean, he was like the picture of health when he was elected. Let's see here, Pope Francis, right after election. I mean, look at the difference there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was it? How long has he been in there? It's not that long.
When was this? 2013. So 12 years.
Yeah. Not that long.
Yep. But it's always what's that phrase? Somebody told me it's later than you think. Have you ever seen that? It's like there's a tattoo, there's a couple other things, but I love that.
It's later than you think.
It's later than you think. Yeah.
It's like, that's good advice. Good advice for sure. Definitely later than you think for Zelensky.
Oh, nice segue.
Yes, to our sponsor.
What are your sponsored by Carl's Jr. What's your take, man? What's your take on that?
Okay, so I watched the video a couple times, I listened to a couple talking heads, and here's what I think is going on. It's a little different from what I think the talking heads were saying. So maybe this is like a fresh take. Okay, so I think Zelensky has been in kind of an interesting media bubble. He's gotten a lot of positive press from what we now should probably call USAID funded press outlets. Which is the majority of the mainstream news and so on. There's that spread in Vogue with him and his wife. They're like, wow, the fashionable wartime president and his first lady kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then I think also, if you've been reading the news coming out of America since about 2017 on, you'll get this impression that the most important thing to the American public, especially the American government, is stopping Russia.
Right.
Like Russia is the enemy, the villain. They took from us our first woman president through some kind of skullduggery. They installed kind of one of their own who's been blackmailed. There was all these reports. There's all this stuff. There was an impeachment thing, and then like two of them. And the only reason that Trump was elected in the first place was because of Russian interference. And so now Russia has to be punished. They've got to be punished.
Right.
And the problem is that you can't do it directly. You can't launch a missile into Russian territory because it's suicidal.
Without some serious repercussions.
It's World War III, right? I mean, they'd hit the button, the button, yeah. Launch everything, click, So
and you figure it's just like in the cartoons, right? Where it's one big red button and it says "kill them all."
Kill them all, yeah. And there's like, don't touch.
Yeah, don't touch this. Yeah, don't touch it. Yeah,
don't touch it. So he's thinking like, look, I'm the only game in town when it comes to defeating Russia. And the thing is, we can't. We know you can't. We know we can't defeat him. We know that even with your arms, we're not going to be able to defeat him. That's why he's always talking about, we're a long way from the conclusion of the war. We're going to just keep going. This is going to take forever, because it's not about Ukraine. It's about Ukraine as a vehicle to punish Russia by people who can't attack Russia directly. It's like, hey, we're involved in the war right now. We're not a nuclear power, so he can't use nukes against us. So we can launch drone strikes into Russian territory. Like there was videos of
but it's not us. It's Ukraine. We can help Ukraine.
It's Ukraine, right? It's Ukraine. And so then it's like, well, we're just trying to help an ally, a democratic ally, whatever. And so while that's going on, there's a huge amount of money and stuff that is flowing into the country, some of which winds up going to the war effort, of course. And a lot of it goes to line the pockets of everybody that's steps along the way. So
allegedly,
almost certainly.
We don't have an accounting of it, so allegedly.
Yeah, this is like my take. This is I'm weaving a tale. Right?
Yeah.
So Zelensky sits down and he thinks to himself, look, the U.S. government under multiple presidents now has, in a bipartisan way, shipped me money, supplies, all this other stuff. All of the press is in favor of me. And Trump, we've been hearing all these reports that the Republicans are dissatisfied with him. He's losing the support of his base. It's not going well. And so here we go. He needs me more than I need him.
Yeah.
So I can tell him, hey, look, if you don't give us what we want, hey, today they're fighting us, but I mean, they're going to come get you next, right? He's going to swallow up the whole world if we don't stop him now with us. And we can like say this stuff to the media, which he knows the media loves this kind of thing because he's been listening to it or whatever. And I think that was an unfortunate miscalculation on his part, because the Trumpy people that I know, they don't want the mineral deal. They just want to be done. They just want to walk away.
That's right.
Like if you can't win it with the stuff we already gave you, that's your problem. We did it.
That's my take of MAGA world too. Is just go. We're done. Just enjoy the money, do whatever you do, and we're out.
We're done. Yeah. So like the Trump people, the Republican base wants less than what Trump was offering him. So Trump had every political capital to just walk away. And so for Zelensky to be like, no, look, I'm your shot at defeating the enemy that we all know. Everybody knows this is the enemy. Your own people know this is the enemy. And it's like,
right.
No.
Right.
Whoops.
Well, so do you not think? Well, it's kind of interesting because I want to make sure we're current and not hashing out something that's already kind of. But
I would move your mic. I think you're getting some interference against your neck. You might try moving it. Sorry, just a little muffled.
Where should it go? Up here?
Yeah, either that or maybe just clip it into your shirt a little lower.
A little lower. How's that?
I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Is that better?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Okay. Yeah. So word was today. I was just reading in the Telegraph. In fact, I'm looking at it right here. So the quote was, where did I see it? Zelensky is ready to work under Trump's strong leadership to bring peace.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Vows to make things right with Trump, ready to negotiate. Yeah. Ready to work with Donald Trump's strong leadership to achieve a lasting peace.
You got the message.
It's time to make things right. Yeah. We're ready to work fast to end the war. The first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky. He said, truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and truce in the sea immediately if Russia will do the same. Then we want to move very fast through all stages and to work with the U.S. to achieve a strong final deal. So that was, he posted that just maybe less than an hour ago.
Yeah. So totally predictable. It's like when you make a blunder like that, then it's kind of like, because Europe, the heads of Europe all posted the exact same message on X, like identical. Ukraine, you're not alone. We're going to help you. No,
and we need the U.S.
And we need the U.S. Well, and they were like, we're going to pledge this amount of money, which, fascinatingly enough, was less than half of the amount that they currently spend on Russian energy.
Right.
So they would have found themselves in the position that America so often does, where they fund both sides of the war.
Both sides, yeah, exactly.
Which, yeah, like we can't even do that. They're not going to be able to do that. So, yeah, it's like that's a non-starter.
So here's my question for you. So do you see any validity to the perspective or storyline narrative, whatever you want to call it, that this is basically like we can't appease, basically it's all, Hitler and Munich,
Sure.
If we roll over and play dead for Putin, then what's next, and yeah,
it's like taking a marker over Crimea or the Donbass and saying Sudetenland.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
That's all I just want the Sudetenland.
Just want that. Then I'll be done. Yeah. Yeah.
So do I think there's any?
I mean, is that even a consideration in your framework?
Yeah. I mean, so I thought about that at first because it was like, man, I don't. So there's a couple things. So one.
I mean, I think a lot of these Republicans are just getting deluded into thinking that somehow like Putin is their friend, or and this has been a long running thing for the past probably 5 years, where Republicans, once Biden got in office, it was like they make shirts with Putin on the back of a horse without a shirt on, and this is what a real president looks
wrestling
like.
a bear or something.
Totally, and then I've even seen MAGA-esque shirts where it's like I'd rather my daughter date a Russian than a Democrat, that kind of stuff. So like, hey, this is no big. So I didn't know if like what your thought process was there.
Yeah. So interestingly, I think. So that's kind of fascinating. I don't know if we want to go down this road now, but I think culturally there's a lot more similarities between, say, so if you think about Russia,
I've heard all that. I was just considering like, do you think in this moment with this individual Putin,
right?
Is that a concern where
that he's making a play to take over all of Europe or something like that?
Well, I mean, he's on record saying he wants to restore the Soviet Union. So like, I mean,
sure.
Yeah, so it's reasonable to assume that he means what he says. He's been consistent saying it for almost 30 years now. So why not? Why wouldn't this be a first domino thing, especially when he sees that, we don't have the ability to follow through on this is, I mean, this pretty blatantly, I mean, he invaded the country and, I mean, it's not really.
Well,
ambiguous about, I mean, all the stories that they're making up about, we did it to get rid of the Nazis. It's like, oh, come on, man.
So there's so I think there's a couple considerations here. So one is this really, because I know it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, this is like Hitler all over again. Is the situation really as analogous? That's
the question. Yeah.
Is that the right frame, right? Because I mean, imagine the United States breaks up and we wind up with like all the eastern seaboard, the original 13, Florida, all the way to say Louisiana and stuff, and then Texas and whatever, it breaks off or whatever. And so we've got like maybe 3 or 4 sections, but the biggest and most powerful one is that eastern seaboard. And I mean, if they're like, yeah, we really want to re-annex Arkansas, and it's like, well, just 30 years ago we were all part of the same country, and maybe they don't like it, but then some other group is, maybe there's like a really strong alliance between Texas and Mexico to where like, well, we're not going to go invade Texas, but we might invade, and it's like, we'll take that.
We'll get Louisiana.
Piece. Yeah. They already have Louisiana, so it's like,
Arkansas is just right there. Yeah,
Arkansas is right there.
Not
we need this
little
buffer zone.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, that's a little different from like invading another country in the way that like Germany invaded France, for example. I mean, it's just real different. So,
but not so much with the Czechs.
Not so much with the Czechs, right?
I mean, so it is somewhat analogous there, because these were German-speaking Czechs, right? That
right.
Hey, they belong to us. They want to be with us.
trying to figure out where like how to, without gerrymandering, like how to pick the right frame of reference, I think is very tricky. I also think, and so I'm kind of weird this way, just because of historical concerns. But I actually think countries have a right to try to invade other countries.
Well, I mean, it's been going on for millennia. It's not like there's some
that's the norm
law against it, right?
Yeah, that's the norm. So like to say, well, look, these boundary lines, these are sacred. Like there are no sacred boundary lines.
Of course, they're sacred. We drew them.
But it's like part of the propaganda to say, this is where the boundary should be, and anyone that changes this has like violated all of humanity or something like that. It's like, no, actually, countries routinely will try to take over other countries. Again, across human history, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I can't look at that and say that that's like particularly immoral. I mean, just think about like the Aquitaine region between England and France and how often that changed hands. And it's like, okay, so in that case, I look at it and I'm like, well, I feel.
But this was technically an ally of ours, and Europe. So we do have some interest in maybe having their back. No,
sure, we do. That's what I'm saying. Like it's one of those kind of complicated situations. It's not like we have a mutual assistance pact, which England did with Belgium, which, by the way, is why they joined World War I on the side of France.
Right.
Which
shocking everyone. Germans, Kaiser Wilhelm was like, you guys are supposed to be fighting with us.
Yeah, like you're gonna join with France?
With
like
them?
You hate the French people. Yeah. So but they had a mutual assistance treaty. And I don't think we have a mutual assistance treaty with Ukraine. So then it's more of like, well, how much does it serve our interests? How much is it worth it to us? Like it's one of those. It's difficult to say, right? So they're not a part of NATO.
Ravi just pointed out, and thank you, Ravi. I was about to bring that up anyway, but we did. We promised them that we would protect them. And Ravi says 94. So it was Clinton, I think, that was in power, and we said, hey, you draw down your nukes, and then we got your back, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But again, it's always going to come down to, and by the way, this is what the Kaiser said during World War I. It's like mutual assistance pacts are routinely broken, right? because if you're like, well, okay, you're going to war with them, so I guess I got to go to war too, and like, you realize what that means? Like your entire economy is going to be altered in order to support the war effort. Your people are going to go through rationing. You're going to kill hundreds of thousands of your own people. It's like, is it worth it to you? Like, you actually have a choice about this. It's not, you're not a computer. And so if you're thinking, okay, Russia really wants this spot, and if we're going to be like, all right, we got your back, we're launching. It's like, yeah, you're ready to get New York wiped off the map for this region of Ukraine. And you might look at it and say, like, I don't like what's happening, but no, I don't want New York to get wiped off the map. I prefer to keep New York. So,
I mean, but by that logic, Putin would have been thinking about that before he invaded Ukraine, saying, well, I mean, do I want this land bad enough to have Moscow wiped off the map when these people, and
right.
And he was gambling that, hey, I've been in office a lot longer than these guys, and I'll be in office a lot longer than them. And I guarantee you they'll run out of political will and everything else before I get done.
Well,
and it's turning out that his gamble was correct,
Especially if you look at when he did it. Like, he went in when the United States had a particularly weak government, when everyone was basically just sort of enamored with themselves. I guess they're like, we're too busy doing these other things, and so we don't have time.
If I recall right, I mean, he did it almost right after the the Afghanistan pullout, which was a debacle, so he's like, these guys can't even get their own people out of here. I mean,
they're leaving all this weapons behind for the
now or
Taliban,
never.
Whatever. Yeah. So
it's interesting. I was talking to a buddy of mine. Well, Ruzi. I was talking to Ruzi earlier today about this. I was just kind of asking his opinion, and but from his point of view, he's like, well, he's like, he was just talking to some friends of his that were in Russia, and he was like, I just think it's a completely knuckleheaded thing to do right now, because Russia, I mean, they're basically bankrupt. They are 55% of their GDP now is spent on munitions. And I was like, well, that's kind of my point. It's like, okay, if they've ramped up their economy to where they're willing to put 55% of their GDP into, but we're never going to get close to that. The rest of Europe's not going to get close to that. Ukraine's not going to get close to that. So, like, at this point, like, all right, what kind of leverage do we have to, exit the scenario with some kind of, face? He's like, yeah, but on the other hand, he's like, well, okay, if you're spending 55% of your GDP, whatever that is, on munitions, and you can't feed your people, all of your social programs have been impacted, and the majority of your populace depends on these subsidies from the government, which they do, then, if you just keep the pressure on, keep the sanctions up for, let's say, another year, 18 months, whatever, then, very likely facing the collapse of that government, or a revolt or something. And you're just kind of waiting for somebody to have the cojones, basically, to pony up and, say enough of this, and I asked him, I was like, okay, well, let's pretend that your scenario is correct. And let's say that we did keep our foot on the gas for another, let's say it's 18 months, 2 years, whatever the number is, 3 years, whatever. And Russia does collapse. Like, is that in our interest, to be dealing with
a collapsed Russia?
Nope. Maybe. Well, to his thinking was, well, I mean, whatever comes after, is almost certainly going to be better. I'm like, how?
Is it?
I'm like, this guy's not some kind of, by this guy, I mean Putin. I mean, he's not some kind of, I mean, I admit, absolutely bad guy, tough customer, not somebody I'd want to maybe trust as far as I could throw him potentially. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, not an ideologue, not some kind of extreme right winger, his whole, like, let's bring the Soviet Union back to its former glory has all been rhetorical at this point. He's been in office 30 years, basically done. I mean, you had that thing in Estonia, you had a little thing in, what was the other one?
Georgia.
Yeah. And then, obviously Crimea and this. It's like, okay, we got 3 or 4 theaters, let's say over 30 years that he's done anything in. And I mean, if this is your grand plan to bring the Soviet Union back, I mean, you're possibly the worst, executor of that vision that I've ever, seen.
Well, I from the speeches that I've heard, I haven't gotten the impression that the main issue was land. The main issue was something like manufacturing, technological superiority,
Position, prestige.
Yeah, like when you watch some of the movies coming out of the Cold War, right at the end, like if you saw Hunt for Red October, for example, and you compared what the American sub looked like to this imaginary version of what the Russian sub,
right?
The Russian sub is way nicer. All the crew is way more professional, and it's just like,
dude, they had Sean Connery. I mean,
yeah,
game over.
A
Scottish,
but
nuclear.
It's like, oh, the Soviets, like, oh, their fighter planes are faster than ours. They got
to space faster than us.
These guys know their stuff, and we gotta, we're gonna have to work hard to keep up. I mean, much less get ahead in the areas where we can, but keep up is going to be hard enough on its own. Now,
that's why we faked the moon landing.
We look back, and we see like, well, okay, there's a little bit of a Potemkin village going on here. The country was much poorer than it appeared. The military spending was out of control, and it made it look like they were able to do stuff that they couldn't. But it's like, all right. I mean, that would be, I think, quite an accomplishment if you could pull that off. Some of the land choices all look to me like Crimea is for the seaport stuff and
Black Sea, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the stuff that look kind of like strategic. It's not just like, I want the land, I want everything, I want to annex everybody. I haven't gotten that impression, at least from the stuff that I've seen. So, I don't know. It's one of those where, there's the ideal where you're like, what should have happened or shouldn't have happened, and there's like, well, here we are,
Well, exactly. So that was my question to him was like, okay. To me, we can all go back endlessly and relitigate. Ravi here is going back and forth on the Russian timeline and everything, and had a little defense of Biden there with the Afghanistan. Trump saddled the timeline on him, and so that was. And hey, you may be right. You're still completely inept in the way that you handled it, but and that's not a dig on Biden. It's just a dig on the situation. I mean, I don't know anybody that watched that and thought, wow, this is the height of American competence here. I just feel like at some point you just got to say, okay, look, here's the scenario. And this is, I've asked this of all my Democrat friends, except for you, Ravi. You and I need to have a phone call. I haven't talked to you in a while, but like when I'm having these conversations with my friends that, like I said, I've been voting Democrat for years. I'm like, okay, look, most of these priorities, cutting defense, reorganizing our defensive / offensive footprint around the world, refocusing on home priorities at home, all these different things. These are things that Democrats have wanted forever, at least rhetorically. And, it's like, okay, now that they're being done, there's no, where is the, hey, great idea, don't really like the implementation, love to give you my 2 cents, how can we sit at the table? None of that. It's just kind of like, y'all are fascists and this is the worst thing ever and we have to fight. It's like, come on, guys. At some point, let's practice what we preach and work together where there's common ground. Like these are from a principle or a vision perspective, right? These are things that we should all be getting behind. Like, who does not want to cut government waste? Who does not want to do? Now, do I endorse 100% of how they're doing it or what they're prioritizing? Of course not, dude. Nobody's going to endorse except for them. These are the greatest ever, whatever. I mean, we can all like dispense with the hyperbole and the self-aggrandization or whatever you want to call it, and still recognize that, hey, these are priorities that I agree with. A holistic approach to health, all these different things. This is stuff that again, Democrats have been wanted forever. So it's like, okay, well now you have people in office that are actually using many of your talking points. And I get that it's infuriating, but like, unlike when Clinton was in office, Clinton was a master at like triangulation. He would take these Republican talking points, co-opt them, and then say, hey, yeah, we should have a smaller government. And here's how we're going to do it.
We're going to do it my way.
we're going to do it my way, still prioritizing Democrat priorities, but at the same time, Republicans are getting some of what they want, which is to shrink the government. So it's like, okay, the Republicans back then at least were like, man, this is pissing me off. He's taking all of our best ideas, and I have no choice but to work with him because it's what I believe in. Now you have a scenario where it's like, this is pissing me off. They're taking all our ideas, and I'm not going to work with you because you're not on our team. And that is just, to me, ridiculous. You know,
Yeah.
I will, Robbie. Thank you.
Well, and I also think that some of those, some of the rhetoric that you've been hearing is not, when the opportunity comes to do something about it, not really, those are not really what they believe. So, you know, when you hear people say,
but that's, see, to me, that is, you may be right, but you don't get anywhere by like questioning people's intentions. It's like, look, if you give me something rhetorically, I'm going to use it. Like that's no.
Well, what all I mean is, you say, well, gosh, you know, like they've been saying that they want these things, and now when someone is doing it, it's not them. Instead of asking for a seat at the table so they can help guide that process in a way that's more advantageous, they're just saying no the whole time. And it's because I think they actually didn't have those parts. That was all talk. And so it's the easiest thing in the world for them to oppose it now, because it was nothing that they ever believed in the first place.
Maybe you're right.
It was like, here's some red meat to what the voters want today. But, you know, what they, you know, back then, that was back then. Now, what do the voters want? At least their voters, what they see their voters. Well, they want things like more Ukraine money, so they want to stop the, actually, there's like weird issues right now with what to do about it, the Israel situation. We need to make sure that we make women's sports safe for trans women. We need to do, like, there's like a list of stuff, but none of that is the things that they've been talking about. So it's like, okay, I mean, I don't even think that's bad necessarily. I just,
so this is where
actions speak, right?
100% actions do speak. I mean, this is where I was going with that was, okay, just from a big picture, like step back from all the noise. And it's like, look, the reality is you got a $36 trillion debt. Something like 10 trillion of it, or 8 trillion, I can't remember the number, but has to be refinanced here in the next 6 months because of the way that they took the money out over the last like 4 years. So they have to recapitalize this debt at whatever the interest rates are at that point, and whatever the world thinks of our ability to repay, obviously. And so if we don't get the spending and the GDP ratios where they need to be whenever that cliff happens, we're going to be in bad shape. I mean, this is not me saying that. That's Ray Dalio saying that. That's Jamie Dimon saying this. I mean, that's everybody who's in finance. Like, you got a big problem coming up. And so it's like, okay, dude, if we don't get that right, then you're just in this death spiral of your interest rates and the interest that you're paying on the debt outpacing literally, which we have right now, interest. We are paying more in interest on than every other government priority, with the exception of Medicare. Medicare is the only line item. So it used to be even small. Now it's bigger than defense. So it's like, okay, yeah, exactly, Robbie, bigger than defense. So it's like, dude, this is not sustainable. So we have to. It's like all this screaming and crying about like, oh, but there's this program that's going to go away, and there's this and that, and whether it's Ukraine, Israel, dude, across the board, it's like you got to have like a zero. They teach it in business. It's like a zero-based budgeting where we just pretend that we don't have any expenditures, and we say, okay, what are our priorities and what kind of money do we need to fund them? Whereas what we've been doing is basically, well, here's what we've been spending money on. So of course we have to keep spending money on all that. And then what else are we going to do?
And more.
And it's like, and I think, unfortunately, even the Republicans right now don't get it. Like the budget proposals that I saw are all increasing.
Yeah,
they're spending more money.
I think like, they get it,
guys.
I actually think.
Well, rhetorically they get it, but
no. I think they get it. I think that they're. I think they're sort of planning on the U.S. currency to fail. I mean, otherwise I don't understand what.
So
what
then,
you're
what are you
looking
going to
at.
repay your debts in?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that all the debts are currently in USD, and so it's like, well,
So we'll just print it and pay you off.
print it, pay them off. You know, take the dollars and like do a haircut of 10. So say like, okay, your $100 bill is now worth $10. Return them in for the new dollars.
Just like
then,
they did with the peso in Mexico, right?
Yeah, just start over.
These are
And you say,
Mexican
well,
dollars.
gosh, you know, that means that the credit rating dips or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's going to suck or whatever. But you know, the people who knew about the timing of this, and they probably would become fantastically wealthy. And the people who do know the timing are the ones that currently have no rules against insider trading. And so, like, the people in Congress, the reason why they're spending like this is that I think that's the end game. Otherwise, I don't understand. It's like the person who you look at me like, dude, you're spending twice as much as you're making in a year. And you're like, yeah, but I'm going to keep going. Like, I'm just going to keep going. And eventually you say, well, I think their plan is to declare bankruptcy. Like, that's what they're going to do this.
How much free stuff can I get before I give the finger to Visa? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then especially with, you know, where do I move so that the laws are the most advantageous to me as far as keeping my home and my car, my Maserati, whatever else that I have. And then,
well, that wouldn't surprise. Actually, it doesn't sound that far-fetched, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to think about it. Can I just respond to one thing that
Sure.
our friend Ravi here said about the data is what Elon was after, and he got it. He trained Grok 3 on it. So this is actually this is a propaganda point. This is like clickbait, left side clickbait. So the LLMs like Grok 3 have to be trained on a huge variety of information sources. So financial data, list of numbers and stuff, not really that useful. I mean, you probably want some of that in your list, but you could get that from your training data set, but you can get it from lots of different places. Yeah, so there's no way to train an LLM on financial data like that. And Grok 3 is a general purpose.
Just to push back on that for a minute. So one of the guys, you know, they just got access to HUD's records, right? And that was a big fight. They finally, you know, got that 2 weeks ago, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So one of the guys that's on the project to slim down HUD is actually on the board of a company that specializes in getting hard to find real estate data. I have to look up the guy's name, but I just saw this link like a few days ago. And, you know, I've been conceptually, I'm all about the finding efficiencies and all this other kind of stuff conceptually, all about, I'm even all about, you know, this has been pretty controversial when I've said it in the past, but like, I don't have a problem with them turning off, you know, okay, we're stopping all the payments going out for a couple of days. We want to see what happens, because it's kind of similar to, you know, something I did recently where, you know, I got all these subscriptions. I don't even know what I'm paying for anymore. And so I'm canceling my credit card, and I'm getting a new number so that they can't bill on the old number anymore. Right. And so then as I start getting these notices, hey, you know, your subscription, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know I was paying for that. Good. You know? And, this one, I really want this one. No, here's my new card number. Right. So I think I don't even yes, I get that there's a hiccup, but dude, we've shut down the government before over way less of a provocation than what we're trying to accomplish here. So like in the service of trying to get the spending under control and get audit trails on everything, I don't even have a problem with that kind of disruption for a minute. But when you see these kind of connections with, you know, the real estate guy and HUD and all this, it does start to kind of look like, I'm not saying that they're doing it for that reason. I just think it's like, oh, here's an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. And people who are friends of the administration are, you know, getting a nice little cherry pick of whatever the data is that's coming out of here. I don't see how you can say that that's not happening, or at least consider
that very well could be. But
I'm sure,
if we're talking about Grok 3, Grok 3 has been the training set has been locked in for months. I mean, it takes months and months to train these things. So
We're right, but I mean, they're not just feeding it directly. They use the data set, trim it, plan it out, plot it out, and then deploy it.
What I'm saying is that when you're interacting with Grok 3 now, you're looking at data that had been set probably back in October.
Yes.
So it's before any of the Doge stuff happened. And so
Right.
like if there was going to be if you're talking about like reinforcement learning on all this stuff, it would be kind of insane for them to do reinforcement learning using government data, because then everybody has access to it. So like, why don't you try? Why don't you pull up Grok and ask it about your social security number and see if the fine-tuning information includes that? And it doesn't. And that's not a thing. Now, are they data mining some of that stuff for their own purposes?
Dude, of course.
I assume they are. I think that, my normal stance is investigate everyone. So as soon as Doge is done with whatever it is they're doing, I think we need to have the investigation into them. And probably
why not just some transparency in the accounting along the way? I mean, like,
sure,
it's not like we have to wait till they're done.
No, but what I'm saying though is that like everyone's going to have their turn getting investigated. So like most people will keep their nose clean, but not everyone will, and the ones that won't, they're going to, hopefully face some consequences for that.
I like your stance. Your stance is a stance that if you were in charge of everything, I'm behind it. Unfortunately, with this AG and this director of the FBI, it's very unlikely that they're going to be investigating anyone on their team. So it's, just highly unlikely.
No, probably. So most likely what will happen is the House will switch control in 2 years. And then when that happens, a lot of those House oversight committees, the first place they're going to look is the Doge group, which I think personally is a good reason for everybody on that group to be extremely careful that everything that they do is above board and accounted for, and that like things like
I'm sure it is.
No. Well, that's the thing. They're probably not following this advice, right? But it's like if you knew for sure, which you would, if it was you and me on it, it's like, hey, in 2 years, every single email we write, everything we do, every conversation that we have, assume it's being recorded, assume it's going to be played in front of you at a congressional hearing. You need to like act like that's going on. And I'm sure they're not feeling that way. I'm sure they're feeling like, we won, woo, let's do the stuff,
yeah, Trump's going to call off the next election anyway. We're not going to have to worry about that.
No.
Let's use session or signal or something. They won't be able to find out anything. Screw up.
Yeah, the House will look into it in 2 years. That's just.
I'm sure it'll be just as effective as all the other House oversight committees have been.
Sometimes they find some things. Like I don't think it's
what they find is YouTube short clips is what they find. Here's a chance for me to be famous for 15 minutes.
Oh well, I mean, get better opposition party then.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Like, why are you complaining about me? Complaining to me about it.
That's the truth, man. So what else, man? Okay, so in the short term, it appears, not reporting news here, but it does appear that whatever your view of what happened in the Oval was the other day, I've heard, oh, it was an ambush, and then on the other side, I heard, no, he's a dumbass, and of course, it's like he wasn't even wearing a suit. I was telling one of my Republican friends, I'm like, wasn't wearing a suit. What are you talking about, dude? I mean, dude, suits are all performative. Okay, let's just admit that. And yes, Zelensky's costume is also performative. What do you mean performative? He's in a war. It's like he's not in a war today.
He's on the cover of Vogue.
Come on.
He's on the cover of Vogue.
He's
a fashion icon.
I get it, but he's smart. He knows what he's doing. All these guys know exactly what they're doing. Like that scene in the Oval, and I told a buddy of mine this, I was like, every single person in this little three-way here knows that they're on camera and they're playing right directly to their audience, what they think their audience wants to hear, which is exactly why you don't do this in public. Like you first hash out whatever you need to hash out in the back, and point fingers and yell and scream and whatever. And then you agree or you agree to disagree. And like, okay, we're going to go out there and play to our audience here. but to me, that's where I feel like if there any accusation of like, oh, this was staged, 100%
by each of three people.
Well, it was staged by each of the three people, but ultimately, like Trump is 100% responsible for allowing that to go on. He even said at the end, he's like, "That's why I let it go on so long, because I thought I wanted the American people to see this." It's like, okay, so from that standpoint, at least the last 3 minutes were absolutely staged. So to me, it's yeah, okay. Well, Robin, everybody's got their reasons for why they're being performative.
So that's
My
not
only
to
point
his
was
base.
that it was, yeah.
You have to keep in mind there. He canceled elections. He stayed past his term of office. So
Martial law, bro. They're in a war.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were in a civil war and we had elections. Like, you can have elections during a war, but
I'm saying their law says you must cancel. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Doesn't say that.
So what some of this is, it's not for his base. It's for, well, not his base in his country, because he doesn't have one anymore.
We're his base. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's his base. It's his funding base in other places.
Correct.
Where you get to parade around, this embattled wartime president who's the father of his. It's the European George Washington here.
George Washington of Europe.
Yeah, with his troops, to try to appear like. And it's like how Yasser Arafat would walk around in his combat fatigues all the time. You're like, you're living.
Well, dude, no, what's what it's like is exactly when I was in San Francisco back in '99 and 2000. That was the height of the .com bubble, and I was talking to this guy. I was like 25 at the time, and 24, 25, and I remember getting my first lesson in venture finance, and the guy was like, "Look," I was like, well, "How do you guys?" And this was my question all the time to every business. I mean, even today, how do you guys make money here? Right?
Great question.
How does your business work? How do you make money? And back then it was like, nobody could tell me, oh, well, but we're changing this and we're changing the way people, right. But how do you make money?
Mm-hmm.
And this one guy told me, I'd been there for maybe a month or so. I was in San Francisco. I was at an industry standard party. For those of you guys that are old, you remember the Industry Standard, the magazine, rooftop parties in San Francisco. It was just great. Sitting there having a cocktail. It was the thing. And I was like, man, maybe you can tell me, how does this company make money? And the guy goes, dude, their customers aren't people. Their customers are the venture capitalists that they're going to go get their B round from. That's their customer. Yep. And, so it's like, we don't have to make money. We just have to show enough to the next round of investors so that we can get more money in here. And I think that's
well, and eventually what happens is you get bought out too, right? And then the VCs recoup. But you're not ever going to produce a product. That's never the goal. You're going to have IP, and some of your team will stay with the company that buys you out, or maybe the company buys you out in order for you to basically never produce your product because it would be threatening to them. The VC doesn't care.
You know what? That just reminded me. We're missing another. We need to have a rest in peace for Skype. I mean, they were the upstart, man.
They're pioneers.
Revolutionized video conferencing, bought by Microsoft, huge success story, and getting shuttered, man. All good things must come to an end.
Yeah. See, I mean, this is what I'm talking about. So, I mean, this is why it's so important. Looking at Ravi's comment here, he says he can't have elections during a war for a few reasons. One, the law. Probably more important, Russia has almost total control of the Ukrainian information space. Any election he has now will be attacked by Putin. That's part of why he doesn't want to hold an election during the war. So it's like, this is one of those things I think is very useful for if you're planning to do this. If you're planning to stay in power past your legal term, it's very important that you have an enemy that you can say is so dangerous and is so convincing that he or she or it would be able to warp the minds of all the people who would vote in order to prevent them from seeing that you're actually the right choice and you're the only choice to continue doing the right thing. So it's the enemy's fault that we can't have elections. Like, I want to have elections. I love democracy, but it's the enemy.
It reminds me of it reminds me of this Romanian election that was.
They canceled it after they got the results. They're like, "Oh,
yep." And then the the reasoning for canceling it was that, Russia had put out all this disinformation and influenced the election, and the people elected the wrong person, but that's really Russia's fault. It's not the people's fault. So we're just going to cancel that whole election. And it's like,
so they're redoing the election, and they've arrested the guy that won the first time, or not won, but was ahead the first time.
And it's to me, it's like, okay, man, it's at what point do you stand back and look and go, okay, so you're telling me that the Russian disinformation engine is so powerful and so potent that no election anywhere in the world is really safe, because I mean, we live in a interconnected world. So like, Russia got their puppet elected in the United States. They almost got their puppet elected here in Romania. They're getting their puppets elected everywhere. So we just have to cancel all the elections.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well, that we have two choices. We can either cancel the elections, or we can have such control over what people can say in public, what the news media reports and when, and how they frame it, so that we can prevent this, potential bewitchment of the populace. It's almost like it's not just that Putin is a psychopath bent on conquering the entire world, like New Zealand or bust kind of thing, but also he's like a wizard that can like control minds,
right?
And so
we have to protect the people from themselves. You can't let them vote, can't let them speak their minds, can't let them do any of that, because it's all dangerous, and
that's what the enemy wants. The enemy wants them to be able to do that.
It is fascinating, man. I mean, people were criticizing J.D. Vance's speech in Germany a few weeks ago about how, he went out and, basically,
yelled at him for.
But it's interesting, if you watch the whole speech, what he was saying was, look, the reason that we are allies is we believe in the same things, ostensibly. And what are those things? Well, those things are things that are like what's in our Bill of Rights, freedom of expression, freedom to free assembly, freedom
of religion.
Yeah, exactly. Freedom of unreasonable search and seizure, all these different things, right? It's like freedom of religion, we're the free West, and it's like, well, if we're diverging so much in terms of, okay, you guys have, I mean, have you seen the clip that's on YouTube of these German it's a reporter asking these German lawmakers, what is a crime? Like, so if I insult somebody, that's a crime. Oh yeah, absolutely. You can go to jail for insulting somebody. Well, so in person or even online, it's like, no, online's even worse, because you insult somebody to their face, and I mean, it's over, and whoever saw it. But you insult somebody online, it can be seen by millions of people, and so we have to punish you even worse. And it's like, when you're watching it as an American, it's almost like, what am I watching? Like, this is some insanity, but that's, and I can't tell you how many of my, I'm going to be a little heavy on Democrats here. However, it's also on the Republican side. So, but how many American people I talk to are like totally comfortable with suppressing bad information. And it's like, if, Democrats want to, it's the other ones, and Republicans are, I'm not going to say they're just as bad, because they don't have, fortunately or unfortunately, they don't have the whole cancel culture thing mastered the way the Democrats do.
They had focused more on like moral issues.
Well, but
like,
even
we don't want those.
No,
even currently, or whatever.
Even currently, when they're suing, dude, the lawsuits that Trump has been filing against these news organizations are just, to me, ridiculous. It's like, okay, the one he filed against ABC, George Stephanopoulos calling him a rapist. It's like, okay, yeah, that is actually defamatory. He has not been convicted of rape, which is a crime. Hasn't been convicted of that. Can't call him a rapist. He's not a rapist, right? So, I mean, that was a pretty easy call. But this one where they sued CBS or whatever for the 60 Minutes edit for Kamala's interview or whatever, they swapped the answers out.
Yeah.
Number one, news organizations do that all the time. Like, I mean, all the time. And number two, whatever they swapped it with wasn't even that much better. It's not like, I mean, the first answer, she sounded like she didn't know what she was talking about. The second answer, it sounded like she wasn't answering the question. So like either way, I don't think it helped her at all. But it's like, how is this a cause of action? Like, I mean, you're saying, I don't like the way you edited this interview of somebody else, so I'm going to sue you. And of course, they're to me, it's like, okay, there's, and he's always talking about, we're going to cancel your license to broadcast. We're going to cancel it, because you're not saying things that I want you to say. The one recently with the AP where he kicked him out of the Oval Office because they wouldn't call it the Gulf of America. It's like, okay, look, when you rename Mount McKinley or Kilimanjaro, whatever, Denali, you rename Denali Kilimanjaro. Okay, you know what? You actually have the authority to do that because you run the Department of the Interior, runs through the executive branch. So obviously, he can rename whatever he wants. Okay, inside the country, but you rename the Gulf of America, the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. That's an international body of water. You don't have the authority. You can rename it on U.S. maps, let's say, but it doesn't change the name of the international body of water. Like there is another governing body that is in control of that. Now, again, it's performative. It's to his base. People, But if the AP is like, well, we're going to still defer to what the organization that's actually in charge of that body of water calls it, because that's what we're going to do. And he's like, he retaliates by kicking him out of the. It doesn't rise to one of these. I saw a podcast recently. I guess they sued, the AP sued because it was a abridgment of their freedom of speech. They lost, obviously, because it's not an abridgment of your freedom of speech. You're still able to publish. You still have your White House pass. You just weren't invited into the Oval Office, during, a certain interview. And maybe going forward, you're going to miss 2 or 3 Oval Office interviews. That's not an abridgment of your freedom of speech. Sorry, it doesn't rise to that. However, it is completely petty and unbelievably foolish, because your whole supposed, I forget how you say it in French, but your reason to exist is to fight for First Amendment rights. It's like, okay, well, you're demonstrating that you don't give 2 hoots about the freedom of speech. You care about your freedom to speak, and if somebody else says something that you don't like, you don't like them anymore. You can't, so to me, it's like, this is everywhere. And it's like, to me, it's like, dude, if you're a citizen and you care about your rights, you should maybe speak up about, I mean, to me, there's nothing more important than keeping your freedom to speak, to speak your mind. I just don't, there's a reason it's the First Amendment, so.
That was
you like that rant?
I feel like we should play, God Bless America.
Yeah, exactly, man. Where's my Hail to the Chief music?
No, the
I left you speechless.
The first
you just didn't know if I was done talking.
I was like, I want to interrupt this if you're on a roll here. No, the First Amendment stuff. I think some of the loss of this stuff of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and what we'd think of as our allies is really kind of wild. In Scotland, this one blows me away. So in Scotland, there's they have a law that says that you cannot protest within a certain radius around an abortion clinic.
Right. I saw that.
And so they're trying to figure out what counts as a protest. Well, someone shouting at cars, that's a protest. Someone holding up a sign, that's a protest. What if someone was just standing there praying silently?
Right.
They didn't say anything. They didn't engage with anyone. They didn't look at anybody. They just stood there and prayed silently. That is also a protest. You can go to jail. People have gone to jail for that.
And they did arrest somebody. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And so it turns out there are homes within these.
Right. So now you can't pray in your home.
And yes, people were given notices on their door that they were not allowed to pray in their home because it was too close to an abortion clinic, which I guess means that this is part of the wizardry thing. They're worried that maybe some of that dark energy from the prayers will wash over.
Dude, who are they even praying to, man? Nobody cares about their meditations.
Them from harvesting fetal body parts or whatever it is that they do over there. It's we can't let that happen, And so then there was some clarification that said, well, no, of course, if you were praying in your home and no one could see you, that would be fine. But you couldn't pray in a conspicuous way near
In a
a
window. Right.
or aloud, because that might disturb someone intending to destroy their fetus. It's like in your own house, like
Destroy their fetus.
I don't know, whatever you want to call. I don't want to say. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, pregnant person, inseminated person. I forget what the new word is for woman.
Inseminated person.
Yeah.
Inseminated
So for the inseminated person to terminate the existence of the fetus, terminate the we don't want to say existence because the fetus is still there. It's just dead. Or no longer
end their pregnancy.
No longer in a metabolically active state. I don't know how
pregnancy. End their pregnancy.
I'm
trying to save you. End their pregnancy. 3 words. That's it.
That's all I have to say.
That's it.
Sorry, I gotta work on the speech codes.
I do think I'm like I and I had a. So one of my friends runs the National Abortion Federation, the NAF, and they're going to be here in Austin for South by this weekend.
Collect signatures, do some canvassing.
Yeah, all the things, But I do plan to ask her how most of the women that she talks to. And by the way, I'm avidly pro-choice.
You're pro-choice, right?
Yeah, 100%. But I am curious, since she talks to more women about this than I do, how the women she talks to feel about being referred to as inseminated persons. There's something kind of gross and sci-fi about it, but
I like it. It's my new favorite.
Dude, I mean, like, how do you go? And this is a serious question for any.
You got to draw the little giggity symbol.
Dude,
inseminated persons. Kinky.
How do you go from, I mean, this is the same, by the way, I'm all about the glory of womanhood and the glory of motherhood and celebrating, our mother earth and all this other kind of stuff. But when it comes to human females, we're not going to talk about them as women or mothers anymore. They're just inseminated persons. Yeah.
So beautiful. I love every minute of it. I'm telling you.
It's like when it's like sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you're listening to the radio, maybe talk radio or an audio book, or maybe just like totally just caught up in some music that you're listening to, and you're just driving, and then you realize, oh snap, I should have taken that turn, like, and it's
way
like
back there.
And it's like a long ways back. I mean, this happened to me a couple of years ago. I was on my motorcycle and I was just not paying attention. And
you're in the zone.
I was in the zone, and it was like I had to go 30 minutes back, and it was bad. It was on the way from Houston to Austin, and you're on 290,
yeah.
And you're supposed to take that exit, right? And I just kept going.
Stay on 6.
Yep, and ended up having to go through Bryan. I mean, it was whatever.
Yeah.
It was a motorcycle ride, so it wasn't like the end of the world. But I feel like that's where we are on some of these things. It's like you missed your exit.
We passed the exit somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it was J.K. Rowling, she's so funny.
Oh, there's a feminist for you.
Yeah, old school. Someone had posted. Because one of the things that people are saying, one of the sort of attacks against the trans movement is like, well, what makes a trans woman a woman? Like, I don't understand. They're like, well, they go through.
What are we referring to here? Yeah.
So her post was, someone had said something about like trans women or women or whatever, and she replied, "What makes them trans?" It was so funny, right? Because it's like, you can't say. Right, the answer is
they used to have
they were born as it's like no, why are they trans?
Well, recently, I think you and I were talking about this a few days ago. I was like, I became aware of this acronym, which I guess has been in use for a while. I had missed it, and
AFAB.
AFAB. AFAB.
Oh, dude,
Assigned
that thing's
female
old.
at
This is
birth.
like a decade old, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
You
I'm
just haven't been around
late
gender
to the
politics
party,
long
man.
enough.
Late to the party. I usually do show up late to the party, though. I find that's when all the fun is happening.
Oh no, the fun is about to get started.
See what I mean? AFAB.
It's about to accelerate real hard. Did you just see that in the Senate, every single Democrat, every single one, voted against the bill that would have kept biological males out of female sports?
Right.
All of them. So it's like they're that very clearly have set their allegiances in order, right? Where it's like, we need to make sure, like, we're not here for the women, we're here for the trans women, who are stunning and brave, and then women, AFABs, need to, be quiet,
Take
a
one
seat,
for the team.
Sit at the back of the bus, let some other people be inclusion, show some inclusion, and celebrate these victories. Because if you don't want to be one of them. You don't want to be all turfy. Oh no,
turfy.
Yeah, you don't want that. That's like the worst thing that could ever happen to you.
Well, so setting aside,
it's great. I love watching it.
I know you do. I think we've done a really good job in this podcast. And by the way, Ravi just gave us the best compliment. He was like, "I'm so glad I found this live stream. You guys are fun to watch." Amen, brother. That's what we aim to please. We love you too, dude. So I think we've done a really good job on this podcast at setting aside like whatever our morals, not our morals, but like just kind of we've really tried hard to address most of the issues that we've talked about, not from a lens of this is morally right or wrong or whatever, and just try to look at it. Hey, and there are big conversations to be had about all that. It's not to minimize that piece of it, but
we have our opinions, and it's fine.
We're just here talking tactics for the most part, and really which is where I'm most comfortable in the realm of, does this work or not, or how does this work, or how's that been working for you, to borrow one from Dr. Phil, right? This is
Fight Club.
Or Fight Club.
How's that working out for you?
How's that working out for you? I feel this is, to me, it's like, look, from a tactical standpoint, it is bizarre to me how this party, the Democrats, have gotten to the place where they used to be, not some ancient history, like 5, 6, 7 years ago. They owned almost every 70% issue that was out there, 70% issue where you have an issue where 7 out of 10 Americans across the spectrum agree that we should, for example, have family paid leave for parents when they have kids, for example. 70% of America. Popular. Yeah, dude. Very like you go down a whole list of things that are literally 70% issues, and Democrats owned all of them. And Republicans, they were on the wrong side of every single one of those. And I would always just rant and rave about Republicans being morons. Like, dude, if
they want to win elections.
Do you want to win elections? Do you want to be relevant? And
you got to give the people what they want.
Look, we have representative government. That means you represent the people in your district, ostensibly. And so it's like, and just because of gerrymandering and all this other kind of stuff, and I've been harping on this for years, we've been in this game of politicians selecting their voters rather than the voters selecting their politicians, which is absolute crap, needs to end, whatever. It bewilders me how this party has gotten themselves into a place over less than half a decade where they're on the wrong side of 80% issues. It's like, dude, like, I don't know. I have, and like I said, we've talked about it before, I have one friend who's trans. I love everybody regardless of their orientation. It doesn't matter to me whatsoever. And at the same time, it's like, dude, we have women's sports for one reason. And that is because women, if we didn't have women's sports, we would just have sports. And this is where they play baseball. This is where they play gymnastics. This is where they play whatever. And it would just be a free for all, women, men, whatever. And guaranteed men would win in almost all of those sports. Not all of them,
Yeah, very long distance running, I think the women hold records on.
And it is
other
not a
than that-
denigration of women. It is just we are measuring something. And when we measure this thing, men have an advantage. We can measure other things where women have an advantage. It is just not this thing that we're measuring here. And so that's why we have women's sports to begin with. Anybody who has women in their life who have played sports or who is a parent of a woman, an emerging woman, whatever you want to call it, a young AFAB creature.
Whatever those are called.
Those people don't want AMAB people competing against AFAB people.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Yeah. It's true.
Just
it's
crazy.
True. But, they're going to give it a try. They're going to give it a try. And it's going to be one where I think they gotta get it out of their system. I
totally agree with you. It's like what we were talking about something else. You and I were talking about something else years ago, and I was like, this is like, the troubles in Ireland, right? The Protestants and Catholics at each other's throats for, can we say centuries on that? Or, I mean, like a long time.
A long time.
And it's like, or Europe, dude. Europe, I mean, how many years? I mean, how many centuries did they fight, Catholics, Protestants, right, against each other? And it's like, at some point, they just got tired of fighting with each other. And they're like, look, you believe that when you eat this cracker, this thing happens. And I think that I'm just eating a cracker, but let's just get over it. You think that you need to be dunked in this river to be baptized. And I think that you could pour some water on a baby's head. Let's kill each other. Like, we're just over it.
It's like we don't have to agree. We can just agree to stop killing each other.
You go to your building and say whatever you want. I'll go to my building and say whatever I want. And we just won't kill each other. How about that? Right? Like, at some point, you just kind of
Don't worry about it.
Right. And it's like, it reminds me of that Star Trek episode, the classic Star Trek. You brought this up to me a while ago. You're going to remember the name of it, but it's the conceit is that the Enterprise shows up at this planet and they beam down to the surface and they find out that this planet is in a war with another planet, except that the war is fought entirely on computers. It's a virtual war. And so it's like the battleship they're playing, right? And it's like the computer randomly selects a target and there's a strike that happens, but no real bombs are fired, none of that, because they are too civilized for that. They figured out that, man, we don't want to be killing each other and all this random death and destruction. So instead, we've civilized it and we have a virtual war. And then they tell the computers say, hey, 1,200 people were killed in this last attack. And so the citizens dutifully show up at a disintegration machine and walk into it and are disintegrated voluntarily because they're casualties in the war. And and they've been able to maintain their culture and their buildings and their art and all the other things that they feel like make them who they are. And they're very proud of themselves for this. And at the end of the episode, Kirk smashes their computers to bits or whatever, and is like, which, by the way, violates the Prime directives. I don't know.
He violates it all.
He violates that all the time. Kirk doesn't care anything about Prime directives. But anyway, blast the computer to pieces. And he's, do you know what you've done? You've massacred millions of people, real massacre, and the guy's freaking out. And Kirk's like, exactly. And maybe they're just as terrified as you are, because now it's a real war. And maybe because you guys are both so terrified that you'll actually do something you haven't done in hundreds of years, which is just sit down and make peace. And it's like, wow, that's
probably a good idea.
Mic drop, So anyway.
Well, there's I think that, so here's where I think the real, and this is going to make people upset.
Oh, good. That's my favorite part of the podcast.
I saw a study. Now, this isn't a study, every once in a while you'll see these studies where they'll say, like, based on various psychological factors, one political position or another is, it's psychologically harmful or something like that. So this is not one of those. This is where it was a study of a statistical analysis study of women who liberal women, and what the percentage was for liberal women who currently are undergoing psychiatric treatment.
Okay.
They have a diagnosed mental illness that they're receiving treatment for. So it's not one of those like they exhibit certain behaviors or whatever. It's like, would you like to know what the percentages of the actual percentage liberal women currently diagnosed with and undergoing psychiatric treatment?
Would I like to guess? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Would you be surprised to discover that it is over 50%?
What?
Yes. Now, again, this is only a
now, how does that hold on? How does that relate to conservative women, and how does it relate to conservative men and liberal men? Is my question.
So I don't know
Perhaps
the answer.
50% of all Americans have a
mental illness.
Could be. It could be.
It
could be that it's indicative of nothing.
So here's what I think.
But hold on, does that even imply that people like myself who, let's say, take Adderall, because that's a psychiatric condition, ADHD, and I am receiving treatment because I take medication?
Maybe, I don't know. Like I said, I have to go look into it. This is just a study.
Well,
that
I'd be the last person to say I'm not a psycho. So I mean, I'll leave that to everybody else to decide that.
This is a study that I just saw today, and like I said, I need to look into it a little bit more. But this is something that I've.
But you took it to mean something. You took it to mean that they're, liberal women are psychologically messed up. Is your?
No, that's not what I'm saying. So this is something that I've kind of suspected. So I'm currently, I have suspicion about my conclusions because I feel like that it would be.
Rhonda says she's not surprised.
She's not surprised. Yeah. I'm kind of I'm concerned about confirmation bias. This is something that I expect to find. Yeah. And so, here it is, right? So I'm taking this with a huge grain of salt for myself. But one of the things that I've mentioned before is I think that soon, and by soon I mean within the next 10 to 15 years, we'll see the LGBTQIA2S+ community split over the trans
LG over here and the rest
LGB.
of them. LGB, yeah.
And the others over there. And I think it's because you have too many people. I know too many gay and lesbian people that just are like, I want to get married and like have a 401k and we want to adopt some kids and I'm an accountant, they're just like, I'm just normal. I just want to be normal. And then like you've got the trans people out there talking about inseminated persons and that like if you're a lesbian and you won't date a trans woman, then you're homophobic.
You're transphobe,
like
yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm into women, like because I'm lesbian. I like women, like actual women. They're like, don't say that, and so I think they're going to get fed up, and I think it's going to be what's going to push it over the edge is that the trans community, and this is not all trans people. I'm just talking about the community, the way they appear, like on the news, whenever on TikTok or whatever.
As a special interest group, you mean? Yeah.
As a special interest group, they come across as a mental illness group.
To you.
And
we have to put a disclaimer here for legal reasons. You're not a doctor. None of this
not a doctor.
You are a doctor, but you're not a medical.
Not that kind of doctor.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that like if you watch enough of the trans TikTok or trans YouTube shorts or go onto Blue Sky and watch, there's an element where you're like, there's something not right with this person. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. And it's not just that they, wish to live or dress or be known as a member of the opposite sex, but there's like something has gone wrong. And again, this is not all of them, but this is like a very big, broad brushstroke that you don't usually get with the LGB side.
Yeah, and you're just talking about the way that special interest group presents itself. The most vocal voices.
The most vocal voices. Yeah, the most vocal voices. So this may not be as a percentage representative of all. I'm just saying the voices that get the most clicks, they come across as there's this sort of shell of illness that goes along with it, like a candy coating of illness. So I kind of think
that is going to upset a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I think that the LGB group is going to split off from T because they're not going to want to be associated with it. They're like, no, we don't
I
have
think that's
those
already,
problems.
yeah, I think that's already a thing. I mean, like most of the gay
It's
people
kind of
that I know
happening now.
are, right. It's like, I'm not down with any of that, you know?
But I think right now people don't want to say it out loud. They'll say it privately to their friends, but like to come out and be like, no, I'm with J.K. Rowling on this stuff or whatever. You can't really say that because you'll just get nuked from orbit, on social media. And so I think that will change, like I said, within the next 10 or so years. But I think also there might be something like this going on with liberal politics kind of in general. So
In what way?
we talk about like you and I being kind of old school liberals. I might be even more old school than you because I'm liberal from like the 1820s version of liberal. Yeah,
you're truly old school. Yeah,
old school. But it kind of stuff about
more
like
of a 1960s liberal.
I'm into individual freedom. I'm into freedom of speech. I'm into artistic expression. I'm into freedom of religion. I'm into government playing a greater role when it comes to leveling the playing field, to providing equal opportunities, so on and so forth. And you're like, man, sounds like Democrat Party of the 1990s. Like I would be a fantastic 1990s Democrat, I think. But you can't be a Democrat and have those views now because it's full of weird stuff. And like
I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
Extensive enough that it's almost like it's attracting people that are unbalanced. And now it's going into kind of a feedback loop where it's like the unbalanced people are all sort of cheering each other on.
Well, what's weird is it used to be the opposite, and not just like 100 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was, you sound like me in reverse when I was talking about like, hey, the Democrat Party, like under Clinton, under Obama, like it's a big tent party. We love all Americans, and it's like, there was Republicans that had the group think and had the, you didn't vote for DOMA, so you're, and they had the whole what was there's an acronym in Republican circles called rhinos. You call somebody a rhino because they're RINO, Republican in name only. It's like, yeah, they say they're a Republican, but they're not a real Republican.
They're not a real donkey. They're not an elephant. They're
a donkey in disguise.
They're a rhinoceros.
Right, rhino. Right, and so it's like and to me it was like, okay, the Republican Party like for a lot of years there was like literally on a purge to like get, okay, if you aren't 100% on the list to checking the check boxes, then you can GTFO basically.
Yeah.
And it was Democrats who were like, come on in, and we, it is totally flipped. It's like the fact that you can have Steve Bannon and Elon Musk in the same party, and these two guys like hate each other and are like on the opposite side of each other on so many issues. But it's like, okay, but here we agree. And so where we agree, I'm in. Where we don't agree, I'll vociferously object, whatever, right?
We'll call each other out on social media.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's messy and it's dirty. You got I mean, this is the first administration I can remember where you got like a former Democrat as president, a Democrat who ran for president in this election cycle on the cabinet, a Democrat who ran for president last election cycle was vice chair of the DNC in the cabinet, right? Who's the other? There's one other Democrat I'm forgetting, but dude, these people were all. And then just go down the list of public figures: Elon Musk, Democrat; Joe Rogan, Democrat, right? Like, I mean, and these are not like kind of Democrats. I mean, like these are Tulsi, I mentioned earlier, Robbie. She ran for president 4 years ago as a Democrat. It's like it's crazy. And it's like this is the first like truly bipartisan administration that I've seen in my lifetime. And the fact that we're not going to call it bipartisan because they're all fascists. So like, how is it bipartisan? They're all fascists, It's like, guys, like, dude, you guys are missing. I mean, like, this is crazy. This is very historic. Like, whether you like it or not, right? Like, I could disagree with every single policy that they ever put forward, and it would still be the most bipartisan administration we ever. I mean, that's the definition of bipartisan. So it's like there's such a big tent now on the Republican side and Democrats. It's like, dude, if you step out of orthodoxy anywhere, like you are out. I've been watching Young Turks, for example, for, decades. It feels like I think they've been on YouTube for what, 12, 13 years. So not decades, but
quite a while.
A
they were
long
some
time.
OG, like political, daily content people.
Anna Kasparian, dude, like nobody's going to accuse her of being a conservative. Like she's the furthest thing from but she literally had a episode where she was talking about getting mugged by and sexually assaulted by a homeless guy in the park, and basically was like, okay, I can see why basically all she said was, I can see why some Republicans are so pro-police and they have such a recoil against this like defund the police stuff, because like in that moment I really wanted some law enforcement.
Want a policeman to be right over there.
Right. It was like that would have been the most comforting sight I could have seen, would be a policeman coming around the corner. That's all she said. And she got completely demolished by her own side. Like, how dare you refer to this as a homeless person, and it's a person experiencing homelessness. And then they refer unhoused person. And it just like, how dare you? Maybe how it was crazy, the pushback. And it's like, or Shank Ulger, who runs that network, dared to go speak at Turning Point, which is Charlie Kirk's conference. Granted, that is a hotbed of conservatism. It is not, but he went there. He said he basically like called them out, like said, hey, you're going to be disappointed. Trump is not who you think he. He said all the same stuff he always says. But at one point he said, but I could see where you guys were coming from. This is why this issue really worked for you guys. And I can't remember what issue he was talking about. And he got demolished. And people are like, how dare you? Da, da, da. It's like, guys, this is the definition of insanity, what you guys are doing right now. And that's whatever. I'm tired of being like, it's hard to continue to be upset or continue to be disappointed or whatever. It's almost like, dude, just go destroy yourselves and come back later. Come back when you're ready for peace.
Yeah. Well, so that's my kind of incendiary point here, is that at some point the opposition party, in order to like have some real dynamism, is going to have to set aside the mental illness inducing stuff and just be like, no, we're sort of a party of like normal people who want to get stuff done and like go home and.
Well, it's interesting. So Ravi just made an interesting point here a few minutes ago.
The 380 in her pocket. Yeah, that would also solve. Like if you're worried about being assaulted, that's one way to. What is that Samuel Colt says? An armed society is a polite society.
Exactly. What Samuel Colt saying is that God made all men, Samuel Colt made them equal.
Yeah.
A few minutes ago, he said he was, when I was saying how Republicans used to be this and that, whatever, he was like the party that opposed Putin at every turn, that party. Yes, exactly. That party. Because I'll tell you, it was so refreshing to see. Now, again, wherever you come out, let's say they're making a catastrophic blunder here with Ukraine. I don't know. Time will tell. Right. But my point as a liberal and as a historically Democrat voting person, it always would annoy the crap out of me when I would see these Republicans get up and just knee jerk, like Russia bad. It was like, dude, that was a long time ago. Cold War has been over for a long time. I'm sure that this is before Ukraine, obviously, but it's like, I'm sure there are areas where we can collaborate. Like this is not productive dialogue. It's not productive rhetoric. It is just absolute garbage. They just keep trotting it out like some, like we haven't traveled any distance whatsoever since the Cuban Missile Crisis or whatever, And so that was a point where I was like, dude, this is where I remember when Obama was on stage in the 2008 presidential campaign against Hillary, and they asked, would you sit down with Iran and I can't remember what he said, Iran, North Korea, somebody else, without preconditions, right? And he was like, of course, right? And he was completely lampooned by Democrats, right? Who were like, Even Hillary Clinton
They
was
would
like,
just take advantage of you.
They would take advantage. This is why he can never be president. He's not ready for prime time. Like anybody who's been around knows that you can't sit down without precondition, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, you're wrong. He's right. Like, dude, this is ridiculous. This is like, it's like the people that are like, oh, what's the new saying that, speech is violence? It's like, no, actually, speech is not violence at all. Like, in fact, it's the alternative to violence. If I can sit here and call you names, as a substitute for blowing your head off or a drive-by shooting, that is the definition of not violent, right? It's like,
sounds like a win to me.
That's a win, okay? Because at a certain point, every culture, dude, every culture, every relationship, there's a line this side of violence, right? And it's like, whether it's your kids or whatever, stuff provokes you, whatever, and you're like, and you're oh, and you control yourself because you're still on this side of violence. But there's a line across where you become violent, and that's a line that you never want to cross, don't want to go, etc. Okay, extrapolate it geopolitically. This makes no sense. Why would you not talk? I mean, I can talk with you and say, I don't agree with anything that you're talking about. Everything that you're saying is absolutely stupid. And let's meet next month and see if there's any progress. Like that is, let's just keep the dialogue open. Yeah, you're an asshole, I'm an asshole, whatever. And we still have the red phone on each other's desks, right? That says, hey, before I nuke you, I'm going to call you and say, is there a last ditch effort we can do? This is
when we meet next time, I'm bringing our best vodka.
Right. Yeah, I'll disagree with you and call you names over that.
Yeah.
I don't. It's like I don't understand it. It's like, okay, these are things that we should be welcoming from this administration. It's like I mean, I don't know. Again, like you decide what degree you're comfortable with it, or hey, in this particular scenario, it's not productive because of X. Fine, right? But just contextualize it. You don't just vilify. Oh, I can't believe they're having a dialogue. It's like, what are you talking about? Like that's how you get shit done.
Believe it.
Yeah. Anyway, dude, it's been good, man. Hour and a half.
Hey, are you watching the joint address thing tonight?
No, I'm boycotting it like all the Democrats.
Good for you.
I don't care what he has to say. I'm not going.
No, I'm gonna watch it probably tomorrow. I hate watching it live because there's so many like applause interruptions, and all the applause, and it doesn't matter who's doing it. It all sounds really fake to me, and it's like, oh, who stood up this time? Was it this one or that one? It's like, I just don't care. So like I'll watch it with the applause edited out tomorrow and hopefully get some substance. And I'm really looking forward. Who are they getting as the Democrat response? Do you know?
I'm gonna catch the MSNBC replay so they can tell me what it all means and what I have to disagree about.
Do you mean the USAID replay?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know who's doing the response. Are they going to have a response? Why would they even bother?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, no, it's like let me look. I thought I saw it somewhere.
This is another thing that I think is.
I think it's good though. Like I want them to respond.
No, I totally disagree. First of all, everybody should have a chance to say whatever they want to say. What I find completely like ridiculous about State of the Union, things like this. It's like, oh, they're going to get up there and say something. So we're going to have a response that we tape before they actually say anything. And then, but we're going to address all the things that we think he's going to say and why we disagree with everything. It's like, why wouldn't you just listen first and then respond in an hour? Like, I mean, certainly, you know what I mean?
Yeah. If it's pre-recorded, then
they're all pre-recorded because they air right afterwards.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just saying, like, if it was if they had like a team of people, working on it and typing it out and like, oh, he said this, how should we respond? And so we're like, okay, we got it, we're ready.
I have no problem. That would actually be good television. That's why they won't do it.
Oh, I just figured that that's what they'd be doing.
And by the way, that's not a dig at Democrats. That's a dig at the entire system. All of them do this. They're all pre-recorded crap. It's like, just listen first, object later.
If it is not pre-recorded, I'm excited to hear whoever they do it. Because usually, and not necessarily because they'll say something, I mean, maybe they'll say something amazing, I don't know. But a lot of times this is a time to showcase up and coming talent within the party.
I'll make a prediction. This is going to be a MAGA rally inside the Capitol building.
Chance of USA.
That's it. That's all it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Well,
we love Russia and we love Israel. We're not gonna spend our money on anyway. Whatever.
I have, as you can see, I have very high hopes for
This sounds like you have no
substantive
hopes.
Just hey, don't waste your time, man. I'll listen to it on 2x.
Uh,
I'm a 2x guy. All right, man. Dude, this was great. I think
It's
this was
fun.
maybe our best episode ever. We're getting
Hopefully,
better
our
at
most
this.
offensive.
Yeah, dude, that's what made it so great. All right, thanks for you guys for watching. We'll be back next week, maybe. See ya.
See.